Welcome to the Gaming Junkies Podcast, a podcast about gaming topics and gaming reviews. My name is Greg, and this month's game is Kenna Bridge of Spirits. Welcome, everyone, to Season 2 of the Gaming Junkies Podcast. For today's episode, we will be talking about Kenna Bridge of Spirits. Joining me today, as always, is my good old buddy, Rob. Rob, how the hell are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing pretty well. Glad to be back on this. It's been a little bit since I played the game, but I enjoyed it enough. I'm looking forward to talking about it finally. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm good, man. When I first picked this game up, I like drilled through it and loved every second of it. And I think I finished. When were we talking? Was it December of last year? I think.
Yeah, I think we started talking about doing the game in December. And then you picked it up. I'm pretty sure you picked it up like right away after we were talking about it.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I saw the game. I think it was like on the PlayStation Store. I forget where I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, this game looks cool." I'm like, and it wasn't $60; it was like $40 or something. And I was listening to another podcast about a game entirely different, and one of the guys was talking about this game, and I'm like, "All right, I gotta buy this fucking game. I gotta buy this game." So luckily, you guys jumped on board, got the game, and we tried to like do this show multiple times, but it just didn't work out for whatever reason. So we're finally doing it. So yes, this game has been out for quite some time. If you're listening to this, you probably have already played it. You've probably already heard of it. And if you haven't, then we will try not to go over too many spoilers, but I'm sure I'm going to say something that will spoil something along the way. So I'll try not to divulge too much. So first off, just a little background on this game. This game was developed by a company called Ember Labs. The cool thing about this company, I did a little research. There is about 15 devs that were actually working on this game. Now this doesn't include like some of the animations and the cutscenes that you see. That was like kind of outsourced to another company. But overall, it is considered an indie game. And when it was released, it won a couple different awards, or it got nominated for a couple different awards. And I think it got the best indie game in some kind of like it says something about video game publications, and it won the best indie game for 2021. So of course I'm super biased, so I agree with that wholeheartedly. But overall, this game has really kind of warped my opinion about how games should be played or how they should be made overall compared to some of the games that we've played in some of our prior episodes. But before I go on and on, I want to talk about a couple things. So if you got anybody who's listening is new to the show, I typically like to cover, the map design or level design. I like to talk about things within those designs. I like to talk about combat because combat is huge for me. If there's boss fights, we want to talk about boss fights. So first, let's start with map design, Rob. When you first loaded this game, started playing through it and running through it, what did you think of the map design and the world itself?
So overall, with the map design, like from a actual map standpoint, like when you're looking at the actual map of the game itself, I thought the map left some things to be desired. The world itself, though, was beautiful. I loved the actual art, like the actual when you're in the world and you're moving around. I really loved that. I think it was really beautiful. The set pieces were all beautifully animated. Colors really popped. But from an actual map perspective, I got lost a few times. And sometimes I felt like the map itself wasn't helping a bunch. But that was just more on me getting turned around, probably because I was enjoying the sights so much. Even though I did get lost a few times, running around in a circle a few times, I never really felt like I was wasting time because it was always nice to look at the environments. And I did really enjoy the shifting environments, and that as you got to each different section or zone, I'll call them, I really liked the changes in them, especially when especially as things got a little bit more darker towards the end of the game. I really enjoyed the shift in the environment and the shift in the tone.
Yeah, dude, when I first started playing this game, it's I just love like forest area and I love
Mm-hmm.
mountains and I like snow, and it was just like kind of breathtaking when you're looking around.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved like the world. I just loved everything. And the weird part is I didn't realize the map actually gave you indicators. So like when you are supposed to do something, there's like these
Uh-huh.
circles, like a blue
Mm-hmm.
circle, a red, like, and I had no idea. So weirdly enough, I don't know if I had like the opposite effect of you, but like I kind of felt like I was just like doing something and then running somewhere and figuring out like pretty much instinctively in a way, and that's really rare because I get lost everywhere I go. Like even in real life, like
Mm-hmm.
I gotta find like landmarks. Like okay, I have to turn right at the McDonald's. Like that's how I
Mm-hmm.
am, dude. Like I need a GPS for everything. So I was really surprised that I could actually like move around. Um, I think one of my favorite parts with this like whole map design was there was the part where you had to seek out I God, I'm forgetting his name, but he essentially is like the archer. Um
Mm-hmm.
and the path that I took to get to his house was incredible. And I don't know if you recall this or did this, but I remember getting to a point and then just seeing these mountains, and when you have to jump onto certain walls or something, they kind of show you like a little white chalk mark, and that
Mm-hmm.
indicates that you can grab that. And that was kind of cool too. I like how they kind of blended things so it didn't look too out of ordinary, like out of place, but you could
Mm-hmm.
still like know what to do. So I don't know what the hell I did, but I jumped on this mountain that jumped on another mountain, and you had to like kind of shimmy across the sides and jump and drop, and then I found this other passageway that led me to a treasure box, and I came around the other way, and somehow, I don't even know how I did it, but somehow like I got to this dude's house. And I don't know if that was the right way or if that was I don't know, but it worked out, dude. And like that, once I did that, I was like hooked to this game. I was like, "Holy shit, dude. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
freaking awesome." Um
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it was maybe like 20 or 30% of the way I was in the game. I was like, oh wait, there's these indicators. Because at one point I sort of started getting lost because you have to really look at your environment in this game to figure out what you need to do sometimes. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, like jumping or like there's all these little nooks and crannies that you can find. Um, but yeah, I think the map was a little, it wasn't so heavy on the UI.
Mm-hmm.
I actually cheated after I beat the game because I didn't realize like you could collect a ton of rot and a ton of other things. Like I was missing a lot of stuff in that game.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so I looked at a map and they had it broken out into zones.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I noticed about it though is when I completed it, I think like if you zoom all the way out, dude, there is a huge portion of that map that's just covered in clouds.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if that's going to lead to like an expansion or something along those lines. Um, but I don't know.
Yeah, it would be interesting because so that I haven't looked into like how the game did like numbers wise if they even have that available because the game's not been out for super
Hmm.
long. I think maybe like a year at most, maybe not even at that point at this point though, but it's their first game. It's Ember Lab's first game that they actually put out and I'm really curious if they'll add to it. Um it definitely seems like the world has a lot more to be explored just because the story was pretty compact into that area,
Yeah.
and I definitely think that there can be more that can be explored, and it not just feel like a cash grab. Like there definitely feels like there can be more to do with this, with the spirit guides and stuff like that. So that would be really interesting to see more.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of brings me into what I was saying when it comes to like looking at your environment and trying to figure out what to do next. I started to realize that this game was kind of puzzly in a sense.
Hmm.
But one thing I really liked about the puzzles was they kind of fit in with the environment in a sense. So I gotta say, like when I got to this area where you kind of enter this forest after solving some, I'd say pretty basic puzzles. Like I'm an idiot when it comes to puzzles. Like I honestly hate puzzles in video games, but these puzzles were just like on my level, dude. Like they were just perfect.
Hmm.
Like I didn't have to look anything up. I could actually do it. So but so you get to this forest, right? And
Mhm.
You enter it and you have to clear a bunch of shrines. So there's like 4 or 5 of them. I can't really remember exactly. And I had like my headset on that's got the sound like canceling, so it's just like I'm fully sucked into the sound. And I'm running
Mhm.
across and I walk into some water and there's like this tiny little island thing, and then and all of a sudden the music starts picking up really weird, like the chimes start coming in, and it's just like, well, like the music just shifted. I'm like, what the hell? So I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm looking at the shrine and I'm like, whatever. So I walk past it, and then the chimes stop, and like the hair on my arms are just raising. I'm like, "Oh, dude, that was fucking weird, dude." So I went back to it and I'm staring at it. And then I see these like totems with like these crystals in it. And these crystals are like,
Mhm.
okay, I got to shoot them. But there's 4 of them. So I'm shooting them in every way, like for 15 minutes. I kid you not. I'm like, all right, left, right, left, back, right. And every time you get it wrong, it makes a noise and these like bugs come out and you have to kill them.
Mhm.
So then there's this mechanic where you can put on a mask because you get these masks. And I don't want to divulge too much into it, but it's all part of the story. And
Mhm.
this mask gives you, I guess it's like the spirit world sight or some kind of sight. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, like the chimes that you're hearing are lighting these candles at these shrines in a particular order. And it's like bouncing from one candle to the other. And then as you're listening to the music and as you're seeing the flames go out, it's actually telling you the order in which you have to shoot these totems. And I was like, holy shit, dude. Like, I was like, dude, I thought that was so creative. I was like, wow. I'm like, I know I haven't played a lot of like these action games recently because I'm a big MMO guy. But I'm like, I thought that
Mhm.
was like the most brilliant freaking thing in the world. Um, and so I followed it and shot it, and then boom, like cleared the shrine. I was like, wow, dude, wow. I was like, I don't know, man. So I don't. Do you remember that part, dude? It's like in the
I'm
forest. I don't know if you remember that.
I'm pretty sure I do remember that. I think that was there was water around, right?
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
had to go to yeah, I do remember that. And I'm pretty sure that I used the mask and figured that out. Um, that does bring up something that I did want to talk about. But I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I do remember that, and I think the sound design in the game is really good too. I did like the sounds. But on the topic of the spirit mask,
Yeah.
um, I did not like that. Um, I don't know why. I can't really explain it. Like putting the mask on
Mm-hmm.
to see, because what I was using it for when I first got it, when you first introduced to the mechanic, is like to try to find the rot.
Yeah.
Because I think you could use it to try and track down rot. And I just thought that it was a little slow. I'm just being impatient, but I was I was using it a lot to try and find rot, and I think that probably put me off to it, but I just didn't like that because you're putting the mask on and there's a little animation to put it on and a
Yeah.
transition, and then you take it off and there's another transition, and when you're using the mask, you can't really do anything. And I get it, but I didn't like it. So eventually, like maybe like 2 hours after I started getting the mask, I just never used it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used it for that puzzle, that shrine puzzle, but like I rarely ever used the mask.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because I think the mechanic did teach you to like, hey, you could find raw, and I think you could even locate like treasures. Like it was almost like a heat map in a sense, but it was like,
Hmm.
so if you were standing on a cliff, you can look down and see. I got to be honest with you, I am not like a collection type of dude, so I kind of was just into the story. So I kind of found the rot as is. I think at first I was putting it on like every 5 seconds because I thought I had to put it on. And then that
Hmm.
actually did annoy me. Like I was just like, why am I doing this? Like I'm not seeing anything. So then I just forgot about them. And then I kind of put the pieces together and was like, all right, well, if I get stuck somewhere, then I'm gonna use the mask. So that's the
Hmm.
only time I'd really use it. So yeah, I could agree with that because you do like all you can do is look and you have to
Hmm.
like press the button then. And the strange thing about the masks too was you kind of gather some more of these. And I thought, okay, so you're gonna have different masks. So am I gonna have to cycle through them? So you didn't have to do that necessarily. I don't
Hmm.
think. I mean, I never did. I don't think you ever, if even if you had the choice to. But yeah, I agree. I think it's a cool concept, but maybe if they only used it for just like here and there and it wasn't like a requirement, but it was yeah, it was all right. It was okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
think if I remember correctly, you correct me if I'm wrong if you remember, but when you put the mask on, you can't move, right? Like you can't
mm-mm,
walk. Yeah,
no.
I think
Mm-mm.
that was the biggest thing for me was that.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good point. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, finish.
yeah, no, there wasn't much else. Like that was my biggest pain point, I think, was that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I mean, you could be walking around and even if you saw an enemy, maybe that enemy would show up like in a crazy color. Like you'd see the outline and like and then you would know take it off because I got to fight this thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting. Um,
I
oh,
I
go
think
ahead.
I think I understand it though because like the mask puts you in the first person perspective, and the game is a third person perspective
Hmm.
game, so I can understand it, but the it was just frustrating to me, I think. And also like I said, I was using it a lot initially, so that really put me off to it. But yeah, I feel like if you could have walked around with it, it would have alleviated my pain point a little bit because it would have been better for me at least in my mind, to encourage exploring with it and encourage trying to find stuff with the mask.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like I said earlier, there's so many rot I didn't get. There's so many like
Hmm.
chests I didn't find. And once I beat, like, I'm the type of person that once I beat the game, it's very hard for me to go and replay it. Um, Now I did start. Well, I can save this kind of for the combat section, or this could be a good segue into it. But I did pick it up again because we
Hmm.
kind of we I finished it pretty early, and I was like, I gotta like get this ingrained in my head. And when you beat it, it unlocks like the hardest mode. So I did start that. That was definitely a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
Holy crap, man. So that yeah, that leads me back. Let's go back. Let's go into combat at that point.
Hmm.
Um, so I think people are gonna probably roast me for this, but I play Zelda Ocarina of Time. In that game, you kind of got an arsenal of weapons, right? You got like a bomb, you got a hook shot, you got a bow, you got a
Hmm.
boomerang.
Hmm.
You have your sword, obviously, and like a hammer and like the two-handed sword and things like that. And when you start playing this game, Kana, you start on the further you get, the more you start unlocking things, and essentially what you have is a staff that can kind of morph into a bow. You eventually get like a bomb. It's like a mana bomb. You get a shield, which can act as a counter, and then essentially your bow is a hook shot in certain instances. So when I had all that, it was giving me those vibes of like Ocarina of Time because you had to use the bomb and explode the bomb in certain instances, and you had to use your shield if you were good at it, which I sucked at it, to counter. And like the hook shot was nice with the bow. The staff was a lot of fun to use, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And we keep talking, we keep bringing up the rot, but the rot was essentially these little cute little guys that enhanced your abilities, and it kind of enhanced you overall.
Hmm.
So this game, when it came to just combat, in my opinion, it was it was basic, but it was satisfying for me. Now,
Hmm.
Rob, you're a Souls guy, right? You've played some of the Dark Souls, and you're playing Elden Ring right now. And I remember asking you, like, is this anything like that? And you were like, no, I don't think so, right? So,
So the concept is, I mean, the concept is the same, but the combat in the Souls games is typically deeper, but there's, I mean, in Kena you get a lot of you get a decent amount of options with the staff and the bow and the grenade, and then you have, if you upgrade, if you there's a slight upgrade system that
mhm,
you can upgrade some of those abilities, and you can add additional stuff, like you start the game with being able to do counters, but you can upgrade and add, okay, well, after you do a counter, if you do a light attack, you will follow up with a counter attack, or if you do a heavy attack, you'll follow up with a heavy counter attack and
mhm,
stuff like that. So they do have additional things that you can get as you progress through the game, but the combat is decently surface level, but I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. Because I don't think the game is really. meant to be in that same level of
Mm-hmm.
like a Dark Souls game or a God of War 2018 that has a deeper combat system that's got like, I mean, God of War isn't a very deep combat system, but there's a lot of decent combos you can do with that. You can interweave arrows from Atreus or Boy. You can, and then you get different special attacks and stuff. So Kana's combat is simple in comparison, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that they did a really good job with it on one hand. On
Yeah.
the on the other hand, though, if you don't mind me continuing a
Yeah, go
little
ahead.
bit,
Yeah.
um, I didn't do a lot of the exploration into those upgrade stuff that I was
Oh.
just talking about. I barely used them.
What?
Yeah, when I played the game, so I obviously used the staff because that's your primary weapon.
Mm-hmm.
I used the bow a little bit, and I used the grenades a little bit, but I never used the upgraded rod abilities for any of that stuff. I just used basic staff, basic
What?
bow, and basic grenades.
No, dude. You're what?
Yeah. I only played on normal though. I'm not a person, even though I like Soulsborne games a lot, and those games are known for higher difficulty, like I don't play games on the highest difficulty if they have a difficulty option. Um,
Yeah, I don't either.
yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe if I played on a higher difficulty, it would have required more getting into those skills, but I just used the basic stuff. Um, I did use the counter attacks, so after the when I unlocked them after
Mm-hmm.
doing parries, I did use those abilities, but otherwise I just like I never used the rot infused like heavy attacks and stuff like that. I never used them.
So I when I got the rot hammer,
Mm-hmm.
I abused that thing every time I got the opportunity because you could take down like an enemy like a third of their health with that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so people under, I think so. Maybe we can try and talk about this a little bit. When you are in combat, you are essentially the rot is with you, but they're scared at first. So the more you're in combat, the more you're hitting an enemy, or let's say you're building up their confidence. And once they're fully confident, they'll start to they're like little circles, and once you fill the circles you can start using like combo points on a rogue or something like that. You can start to use those points, and within those points, that's where these enhanced abilities come from. So from like the normal mode that I did versus some of the harder mode, like you had to, I think, hit the enemy for it to generate, and if you got hit, it actually took it away. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
forgetting how like the normal mode worked. I think the normal mode you could actually like get that passively, like you don't necessarily have to hit them, and if you got hit, I don't think it went away. um I can't remember distinctly, right? I don't know if you remember.
So in combat, I don't think it generate the in combat in normal mode, I'm pretty positive the rot does not generate passively,
Okay,
but it
okay.
generates off of attacks and you being attacked. Um,
Oh, yeah, okay,
so
okay.
yeah, because if I remember correctly, so you said when you finish the game it unlocks the hardest difficulty, but
Mm-hmm.
over between normal and the hardest difficulty is a hard difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure in the hard difficulty, I didn't play it, but I'm pretty sure you only get rot from attacking enemies, but you
Yeah,
don't lose rot from getting attacked, where it sounds like you lose rot from
yeah.
getting attacked in the hardest one.
Yeah, and the hardest one, you can get hit maybe 2 or 3 times and you're dead. So
Mm.
you have to be good at dodging and then also attacking. And so that's what makes it, I guess, harder in a sense, because at one point when your shit's like fully upgraded, I mean, you can pull that bow back and then put like a rot explosion essentially on it, and then just
Hmm.
let it go, and it just blows everything up like in an AoE like fashion. And then the more rot you get, the more of those little circles you have. So it, to me, I felt like once I had all those abilities, it made the game so much easier, like so much
Hmm.
easier, to a point where it was just like, all right, well, I get my hammer and stuff like that. um but that kind of leads me into like the boss fights. So this game, when you're exploring the map, you have the puzzles, right? And from the puzzles and the story, you have certain bosses, and these bosses are all tied into the story. So kind of have to defeat them to hear their story. And one thing that I really loved about this game was kind of the connection in the story they had, but we can get into that after we talk about some of the bosses.
Hmm.
Um, so I have to say, I liked a lot of the bosses. I think the first one that I really enjoyed, I think they were called the Woodsmith, and this was the boss that was at like the top of that tower you had to climb, and essentially
Oh
had
yeah.
that like blacksmith thing in the middle, and they like had
Hmm.
this crazy armor. And my favorite part about it was it kind of reminded me like of like a Final Fantasy 14 boss sort of, because
Hmm.
you had this like boss that you couldn't touch unless you figured out the mechanic. So once you figure out the mechanic, you have to basically perform, and I guess I won't get too crazy, but you have to throw like a mana bomb at it, and then you have to shoot it, and then you have to take these plates away, I think, and then once you
Hmm.
disrupt it, it makes the boss that like on not like basically what's the word, invulnerable or vulnerable, yeah, makes them vulnerable, and you can actually hit them. Meanwhile, while you're trying to do this, there's this AoE like fire explosion that shoots out from this thing. So you constantly have to jump and worry about jumping while avoiding getting hit by this person, all trying to throw the bomb in there and shoot. So the cool thing that makes this game a little bit easier is that when you jump and pull your bow out, it slows time down. So it gives
Hmm.
you time to like line up your shot, and it's for a brief couple moments, but it still feels pretty badass doing it, but it makes it a little bit easier. Um,
Hmm.
that was probably one of my favorite bosses. Now there was another boss where there were three platforms. It was in the forest actually, and you had to. There was like these demon looking things, and they'd throw these spears, and the spear would land next to you and just explode after 2 seconds or so. So you had to jump from platform to platform, but the only way to jump from platform to platform was to shoot your bow. That became a hook shot. So you have to shoot this certain area, and you would fly right to it. So it was one of those things where you're jumping from platform to platform using your bow and just like taking things out and avoiding stuff. Like it was a lot of fun. Um, I
Hmm.
there's a lot, there's so many more bosses in this game that had their own little mechanic. But those were probably my two favorite. Um, I don't know if you have any memorable bosses, Rob, in this game.
So that's I think so. The first boss that you talked about, the Woodsmith, I'm pretty sure that's her name. Was the first one that really stuck out to me as well. And you know, it's interesting. I didn't even think about the fact that it had all of those mechanics, and it's like an MMO boss because you play Final Fantasy 14. I played a lot of World of Warcraft,
Yeah.
and that boss is essentially like a mini MMO boss because there was danger zones in there. There was spots on, like you said, like you're like rotating like a circle coming out that you had to jump over. I'm pretty sure there were when it was shooting out, it would shoot out little blips of fire and
Oh
that
yes.
landed on the ground, so you had to like not touch those areas too. Um, so I think that that boss was probably one of the more memorable ones for me. A lot of the other, a lot of the bosses that weren't, I'll call them the main bosses, the bosses that you were getting the masks from,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
the final like segment. I don't really recall a lot of those. Um, so I think that at the end of the day, a lot of the bosses didn't really leave much of an imprint on me, besides the main bosses. So the Woodsmith, and I don't remember the other bosses' names. There was the one that was, I think they were an archer, and they were an archer, and they moved all around the map pretty quickly.
They flew, right?
Um,
The one that flies in between
yeah,
like, and you're in the forest, and you have to like shoot them in between trees and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah, that was the first boss that gave me problems. I don't I'm pretty you can kind of tackle some of the bosses in different orders, I think. That was the first, like that one gave me problems. I fought that one last.
okay,
Um
yeah, yep.
and that one gave me some problems, but otherwise like the more general bosses that you found throughout the levels as you were going to the main bosses, I didn't really recall a lot of them, so I don't they didn't really leave much of an impression on me.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. A lot of them were pretty straightforward. They just had a couple basic attacks. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, like you said, if you were good at dodging, like I rolled all the time. There's like a dodge roll. I rolled like a maniac in that game, because I couldn't counter or parry to save my life. So that was my way of avoiding damage. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to think of if there was anything else that really stuck out to me. Um,
The last boss, and I won't get into any, I won't like name what the last boss is or anything, but the last boss stood out to me. It was definitely the most, it gave me the most trouble. I
mhm.
spent the most time on the last boss, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I enjoyed the encounter. That's
yeah.
why I liked it.
The encounter was cool, and also before the encounter, like we don't need to talk about that, but what you had to do to get there, because there's so many points where I was dying, and I was like, thank God they don't make you do it all over again, because it was like crazy just
Yeah.
to get there. Um, but yeah, I also loved that zone too, like the way it looked and everything. Oh man.
Hmm.
But yeah, that I remember I was playing. I was at the last boss, and it was like 11:30, 12. I'm like, I gotta go to work tomorrow. I'm like, I gotta stop playing. And then I think I beat it the next day, but I just
Uh-huh.
remember sitting there forever trying to beat that thing. Um,
I did pretty similar, something pretty similar. The second to last boss, it took me a bit of time to beat that one. And the first time I got to that boss and was fighting it, I probably spent, and like, sure, whatever, people think I'm bad at games or whatever, but I probably spent like a solid 2 hours trying to beat that second to last boss.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I was just like, I just need to go to bed. I've got work in the morning. And then the next day when I sat down, the first time, the first encounter against it, I wiped the floor with the second to last boss. And I was like, okay, I just needed some sleep or whatever.
yeah.
But yeah.
It's crazy. I won't jump off way too much topic, but I listen to like random stuff all the time, especially with video games, and they did this study where people that like if you spend so much time and you're staying up late trying to do something, you actually are like getting worse and worse and worse. And then if you just sleep and you try it
Hmm.
the next day, people always seem to like they did studies on this. People just always have success, and they did this with musicians and stuff like that too. So it's like
Uh-huh.
this crazy. It's something that's out there that actually exists because I just
Mm.
you think you're getting closer, but you're actually like worse, and like it's funny, it's really weird, it's kind of funny, it's definitely a topic I have to bring up on one of these shows. um
Yeah.
so I think overall, I really liked the game. I liked a lot of the pieces that came together, the
Hmm.
story in itself. Now, I'm not going to explain the whole game and everything, but one thing I really liked about the story and what stuck out to me, and I think why I liked it so much, was I do have a weird fascination with what happens, like in the afterlife, right? And I've always loved games that
Hmm.
theme that around like death and living and like gods and all that stuff, right?
Hmm.
And this game kind of rings like home because to me, each encounter you have with some of these main characters that are the bosses you fight, they are going through or they went through something in their past that
Hmm.
essentially is holding them back. And to me, it's like I love psychology and I love all these aspects. And it's one of those things where if you hold on to regret and you are essentially like kind of stunting your growth or stunting your way of like getting past it. And that's exactly what this game kind of talks about. Like you're the spirit guide and you go to these spirits to allow them to move to the afterlife. And it's just that concept in general just rings like so true to me. So I think this is why I'm so biased towards this game, is because all the messages that you kind of hear about what these people, like, obviously they're dead, but you hear their story and like what happened to them and why they're still there, and you kind of like
Hmm.
calm the shores in a sense. And it's just something that to me it's just like such a like a crazy easy life lesson that a lot of people don't understand or they don't realize, is that you don't want to get stuck in the past. You don't want to sit there and just be stuck on one thing for the rest of your life. And that's kind of what I took this game to be in a sense.
Hmm.
It's just, it's like, hey, something bad happens. It's not your fault, or you got to forgive yourself. All those crazy things that allow you to move on. And
Yeah.
that's why this game, I was like, dude, like when I finished it, I was like, I love this game. Like I absolutely love this game. I'm totally biased. It hits so much for me. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know, Rob, what did you think overall of the game? And was there anything that kind of stuck out that we didn't really kind of talk about that you really liked?
So just as before we even get into that, just because
Yeah.
of what you just talked about, I do want to I have a game that I want to recommend to you.
Mm,
Not anything similar in play style as in like an action, like a third person action adventure game like this, but because you talked about like death and the afterlife and like holding on to things in people's lives and stuff in your life and stuff like that,
yeah.
I think you should look into the game Spiritfarer. Um, I can talk to you more about it off the podcast. I don't want to get too much off topic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
But
man.
but
Absolutely.
yeah. So the story, I enjoyed it. I don't think that I don't in general, I don't think the game did I enjoyed the game. But I don't think the game did a lot that hasn't kind of been done already or talked about
Mm,
already, but I think the story that they were looking to tell I think they did a really good job with that, and the message of how you were just talking about, like about holding on to regrets and stuff like that. I think that they did a really good job of showing it and showing how that impacts you or can impact you, especially with, as you said, after you like all of the main bosses, like they all have something that they were going through, and when you beat them you get more of their story. And I think, again, to return to the woodsmith, I think her story was the biggest one for me. Like I think that that was a really good one, with how she was trying to just help that village.
mm,
And I think it was really good. So I did enjoy that. Um, so overall, I the story was pretty good. Nothing too crazy in my opinion. But for stuff that something, just one thing, because I kind of started touching on the sound, is like the sound, like the
mm-hmm.
music and stuff like that. When the credits were rolling, I noticed something about they did a shout out to I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly or not, so I do apologize if anyone listens and says, Rob, you don't know how to pronounce this word, but Kudamani, which is it's a performing ensemble in a village of Pangosikan Ubud, which I definitely did not pronounce that correctly, but that is in Bali, which is a province in Indonesia. And they did a lot. The music in the game is Kudamani, and I thought that was really fantastic. I looked into the website a little bit, kudamani.org, if anyone is interested in looking into it. But they really the village really thrives on tourism and stuff
Mm-hmm.
because of the music, like the performing ensemble there. It's really cool. It was really interesting to look into. So I thought that that was really good. That's something that I always like when game studios like partner up with something that's not typically seen or maybe not like typically talked about, that they'll kind of shout out and they'll use that just to bring a little, and I don't know if they're doing it to bring more uh, attention to it or anything like that, but it really fit. The music was
Mm-hmm.
really good in the game. I really liked it.
Yeah, I feel like the music was, it was definitely, you had these moments of just like utter sereneness. Like that's not even a word. Calmness, I guess. Like you're
Serenity would have
there
been, I
you
think,
go.
yeah.
um yeah, you'll get used to that. Yeah, so it's you're just like I said, you're running around the world and you just get these hints of, and the music plays into the environment too, which I love. It just all kind of blends. And
Yeah.
I think they just knocked it out of the park with like the theme of the buildings and how everything looked, and it just, I don't know, man. It hit a lot of positives for me. I know I'm like over talking this game. I truly am. I'm a big fanboy. Um, but it definitely, yeah, it definitely made me like, wow, this is like one of my top 5 favorite games I have to say I've ever played. But I
Hey,
know,
I
you
mean,
know,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I was like, I know I'm being totally biased, but it's just, it is what it is. Like, I can't help it.
Yeah, I mean, you liked the game a lot. That's good for you. That's one of the things I love about gaming is that different games will bring more for certain people. Like
Hmm.
that's fantastic. For me, the game wasn't like I liked the game. It wasn't amazing for me, but that doesn't mean that it has to not be amazing for you. You don't have to temper how you feel about it. Um, One thing that I did enjoy, something else that I did enjoy, you talked a little bit about the puzzles.
Hmm.
After you got each, because you talked about how you get a bow and how you get the grenade and you get the I don't know how to really call it, but like the grappling hook, yeah, like the hook
The hook
shot
shot, yeah.
equivalent.
Hmm.
Um, each time you get like a new ability, it adds environmental puzzles using those
Yes.
abilities.
Yes.
When I got the grenade and it unlocks the environmental puzzles where you throw the grenade and that blows up and that forms platforms,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I personally loved those puzzles. They're not they weren't too difficult. They were pretty straightforward and simple, but my God, I just that when I got the grenade and was doing those, I'm like, man, I don't know why, but I really, really love these. And so I just really enjoyed that. And then closer to the end, there's a segment where it's just a bunch of you having to do those platforms.
Hmm.
Like it combines the grenade, it combined the hook shot, I think,
Yes.
and then it combined the very last one you get, which is like a dash through
Oh yeah. Forgot about that.
like it adds a thing to your dash. Like it combined all of those, but it was a lot of it was doing platforming by forming the platforms with the grenade, and they only stick around for a little bit of time, so you have to kind of know where you're going with it. I
Hmm.
really enjoyed that. So I did think that they did a good job with those, like not too complex, but felt really good.
You know, it's funny. So when I first bought Guild Wars 2, Guild Wars 2 had jumping puzzles everywhere. And if you
Hmm.
completed them, some of them were obvious and some of them were really tucked away in the environment. Like you would see like this building that was like falling over, then you'd see a tree and then another building, and you would just start jumping, and then you're like, "Oh shit, this is a jumping puzzle." That I think was one of my favorite things in this game, and I didn't even think of it until you said it. But the jumping puzzles, rather than just the puzzles you have to figure out, but the jumping puzzles where you had to jump and actually like make it, or you had to start over depending on where you were, you died or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
that I think also contributed to how fun the game was, because it wasn't just combat, and it wasn't just trying to look at a puzzle and figure it out. It was also you were jumping for puzzles, and you were, so it combined, I think, a lot of different aspects. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's kind of, it kind of made it like well-rounded for me in a sense. And that just brings up a whole nother thing. But um, but yeah, dude, I'm so glad you said that, because I'm like, yeah, the one jumping puzzle, I, like you said, you had to like hook shot, then bomb, then the bomb would flip the rock, and then you jump to the rock and then jump. It's incredible. Like I love that too. I forgot all about that. Wow. Um, but yeah, so you got anything else? I mean, I think I covered a lot of what I wanted to cover. You know, the game, I got it for $40. I don't know. You probably got it for the same, maybe cheaper if it was on sale.
I I got it for cheaper. Since you picked it up right when we started talking about the game,
Mm-hmm.
I held off a little bit because I wasn't able to get it at that time, but I got it for a decent sale. So the game is available for PlayStation 4, 5, and on computer through Epic Game
Mm-hmm.
Store. I got it through Epic on one of their sales because they had a sale on the game and then they had a
Oh,
coupon. So
nice.
I got the game for like $15, I think.
Oh man, dude.
Even even still though, um have I played have I played games at 40 or less that offered more? Yeah.
Hmm.
Did I really enjoy the game? Yeah, I would not have been upset overall if I paid $40 for this game. I think that, as I kind of said, the environments were beautiful. I think the music was really good. Um, I enjoyed the characters were pretty basic overall, but
Hmm.
I really enjoyed them. I thought the voice acting was pretty solid.
Yes.
I just enjoyed it overall. One of my favorite small things that drove me crazy, but I at the end of the day I enjoyed it was almost every character that said Kana's name said it differently.
Oh, well, I was
I,
calling her Kenna for the longest
yeah,
time, and then they're like
yeah,
Kana.
I
I'm like,
didn't.
what?
Yeah, and I didn't know initially. Like I was like, oh, like when we were coming into this, like today, I'm like, man, I don't remember how you actually pronounce her name. So I was looking it up
Hmm.
because there's at least three different pronunciations in the game that different characters say.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So that was an interesting thing. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed the game. Even at $40, I still would have really enjoyed it. It didn't leave a ton of impression on me. I'd probably say, just because I think we do the rating system
Yes.
on a 0 to 10, I'd probably put it at a 6 to maybe a 7. But I'd probably lean more into the 6. But I still enjoyed it, and I still would if you look at the game and the visuals, like if you look at the thing and you think, man, that looks pretty, I'd say go for it if you like third person action adventure games. I'd say go for it.
Yeah, so it's tough for me to think logically about this. I'd say $40, $40 for the game. Um, I feel like that's, if I'm being honest and I'm taking my bias out of it,
Hmm.
I think it's maybe I mean, because games now are like $70, right? So $40 sounds like a steal when I'm looking at a game that's 70. So I think it was pretty fair for it. Do I think they probably could have added a little bit more content for the 40? Yeah, I do. But
Hmm.
like you were saying, like the visuals are great. The cinematics are great. I mean, you feel like you're watching a movie, like a Disney movie when you're watching some of these cinematics. Um,
Hmm.
uh, again, I gotta say, I think it's probably like an 8 out of 10 for me. But
Hmm.
again, I'm pretty biased, man. It hit a lot of positives for me. So, um, take that with a grain of salt, I guess I could say. But um, yeah. So I think overall, $40, it was fine. If you get it on sale, even better. I'd definitely grab it. But I would still grab it for 40 for sure. And
Hmm.
I played it on my PS5, and I'll be straight up with you. There is two modes. There's like performance mode, which keeps it around like 60 frames, which is nice. Game still looks great. There's a
Hmm.
4K mode, which drops it to 30. I can't play games in 30 FPS. I can't do it. I can see like it lagging and it's slower. I can't do
Hmm.
it. It looks better, but you definitely feel like you're chugging along like slowly. So maybe that's just me personally, but I don't know. I don't know how you played it, Rob. I don't know kind of.
I, I think after you start seeing more and more games in 60 frames per second, I think it's harder to go back to 30.
Hmm.
Um, Most definitely. So on my computer, I played it at I 60 was the lowest that I played it at,
Okay.
frames per second.
Yeah.
I have I'm not going to get into computer specs or anything that I have, but 60 was the lowest that I played it at. I probably wouldn't if I played it on the PS5, I definitely would have also kept it at the 60 frames per second because I much prefer the frame rate over the 4K
Hmm.
resolution.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I enjoyed it. Like visually, it was a treat in my mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey. I think I think we can call it. So overall, the game was pretty good. I highly
Hmm.
recommend it. And check us out next time. I think we still need to decide on the game, but make sure you check us out. Rob, do you have anything you want to call out?
Uh, nah, nothing right now. Just as you said, I've been playing Elden Ring. I just got a Game Pass demo on PC, and I'm gonna trying out some games on there as well.
Oh, nice.
Tunic just came out, which is like this cute, almost like an older Zelda like Link to the Past, where you're this cute little fox guy.
I seen that. Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so trying that out. But otherwise, I don't really have anything to shout out. But yeah, we'll see what game we play next, and hopefully we'll have another episode sooner than 3 months from now.
Yes, I agree. All right. Well, thanks for joining, Rob, and thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
See you.